the difference? Does anybody really know? Do you know the difference between kinetic and potential energy? And if so, could you explain it?
Okay, I'm not really sure, but the way I understand it is a pendulum. A pendulum about to move, I believe, has potential energy, and a pendulum moving has kinetic energy.
Okay, can you tell us the difference between potential and kinetic energy, and just describe a little bit about it?
Potential and kinetic energy.
Give a very specific example.
Very specific.
Yeah.
Potential and kinetic. Potential, I think, is like kind of like what, maybe like a spring. It has X amount of energy you can force to move. Kinetic. What's an example?
I hear some kinetic coming from over there. It's just in a different form than usual. I hear it in my ears.
I'm dying on kinetic.
Kinetic. See, from what I was hearing sound. Sound is a form of kinetic energy. Okay. This is stored, I guess, in I don't know what's producing. Maybe the electrical currents are producing the
fans.
Sound. The fans, yeah. A fan is using electric current from the take the potential energy and spin it, which produces sound. Hits me. Kinetic energy.
A pleasant day at Nonsuch Pond.
That's kinetic energy, yo!
What's the difference between kinetic and potential energy?
Potential energy is when you're sitting someplace and then you're about to fall, and that's a certain amount of energy that you have.
The kinetic energy is when you're moving.
It's the energy of motion.
Oh, all right, thank you very much.
Yo, what do you know about kinetic energy?
Physics project!
What do you know about kinetic energy?
Moving stuff.
Moving stuff!
Alright, what's the difference between potential and kinetic energy?
Kinetic energy is the energy of movement. Potential energy is the energy something has to do with height or chemical movement.
Let me talk to you about potential energy. The equation for potential energy is mass times gravity times height. As I increase the height of an object, its potential energy increases. As I decrease the height of an object, its potential energy decreases. The same is true of the mass of an object. Take this pen, for example. When I increase the height, its potential energy increases. As I decrease the height, the potential energy decreases. When they're both at the same height, the basketball has much more potential energy than the pen because of its higher mass. We already talked about potential energy, now to talk about kinetic. The equation for kinetic energy is kinetic energy equals 1/2 mv squared. If I lift this ball and drop it, its kinetic energy is equal to its velocity squared times its mass divided by 2. Currently, this basketball has no kinetic energy. It does, however, have potential energy. If I knock it off the bench, as it falls and rolls, it has kinetic energy, and now that it's at rest, it has neither kinetic nor potential. The equation for work is change in kinetic energy, or delta KE. As I throw this ball in the air, its kinetic energy changes. Work is being done. Let's do an experiment to compare the kinetic energy of this 375-gram ball at a certain speed versus the kinetic energy of the same ball at a greater speed. Trial 1. Now for trial 2. This time, I'll roll the ball faster. According to my calculations, the speed of the ball in the first trial was 2 meters a second. The speed of the ball in the second trial was 2.7 meters a second. How much more kinetic energy do you think the ball would have on the second trial than on the first? So, what do you think?
Well, since 0.7 is about 33% of 2, I think that the ball would have about 33% more kinetic energy.
Good guess, Tom, but not quite. The kinetic energy during the first trial was 0.75 newtons, whereas the kinetic energy during the second trial was 1.366 newtons. A pendulum is a beautiful example of both potential and kinetic energy. If I hold the bob of a pendulum at one side, it has potential energy and no kinetic energy. As I let it go, that potential energy is converted to kinetic energy. While it's in transit between the two sides, it has kinetic energy. Every time it reaches one side, it has potential energy.
What is kinetic energy and or potential? The fingers move quicker, slower, transferring to music sound waves that hit my ears.